Today, I want to talk to you about open source. Open source didn't build itself. Community is the real infrastructure. I'm going to be talking about the Kubernetes project specifically. This is not so much a talk about how great open source is. It's more about community health and things you can do to keep the community strong. And I'm going to be talking about my experience. So I'm a principal SRE at Akamai, but I've also been fortunate enough to be a CNCF ambassador for over 2 years. I'm also a KCD organizer, so I organize events like this, KCDs. And we've been running the KCD Texas for the past 3 years. So that's been a real honor. Also, I organized the local chapter in Valencia, so Cloud Native Valencia. And also, I've been a part of the release team for the past 3 releases, first as on the comms team, and then on the docs team for 137. So I've been a part of this community for nearly a decade. I spent a lot of time trying to pinpoint the exact moment to where I felt like my contributions matter, where I really felt like I was a part of the community. I can consider myself a contributor. Over the near decade, I've been kind of waiting for this spectacular moment, a speech, an announcement, something cinematic. But in reality, it was really none of that. It was just a matter of somebody saying, "Hey, I think you should volunteer for this role. You'd be great at it." It was somebody saying, "Can you help me with this PR?" And that's really it. Those small, tiny moments, but they carried something that I hadn't felt before. A sense that someone actually noticed I was there. And also, they would notice if I wasn't there. Most of us spend our careers contributing to systems that keep running without us, or at least that's the hope, right? So building automation, high availability, fault tolerance, etc. The work lands kind of in a void. It doesn't really talk back, right? So this was different. These people had invested in me, and somewhere along the way, I stopped contributing because I felt like I should, and started contributing because I didn't want to let the team down or let the people down. That shift from obligation to belonging, that's when things started to get real for me. And it runs on something that it takes a really long time to build, trust and everything, and almost no time to destroy. Here's what I know now. These moments are rare. My entire career, I can count on one hand the people who stopped what they're doing and chose to show up for someone else. One hand. So today, I'm not here to celebrate the cloud native and how far we've come. I'm here to ask you one question. Is there someone in this community who would notice if you stopped showing up for them? Because if the answer is no, we have a lot of work to do. So let's talk about what the community actually looks like at scale. So we have, in the whole CNCF ecosystem, we have 300,000 contributors, over 230 plus projects. If we focus on the Kubernetes project specifically, there are about 9,000 active contributors, active maintainers, holding it all together. By any measure, Cloud Native is the most successful open source ecosystem ever built. And yet, I want you to look at this number all the way to the right, 83%. 83% of everyone who has ever contributed to K8s is no longer actively contributing. 8 out of 10 people who cared enough to show up eventually stopped showing up. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. For a project of this size, high turnover is normal, right? People contribute, scratch their itch, and move on. That's how open source is supposed to work. And you're not wrong. But here's the question that keeps me up at night. Of the 17% who stayed, how many of them stayed because someone made them feel like their presence mattered? Because if the answer is just a handful, at least a handful, I suspect it is, we're not looking at a healthy attrition rate. We're looking at a retention system that runs entirely on generosity of people who figured out, mostly by accident, how to make someone else feel like they belonged. That's not a system, that's luck. So the question is, the question is not that, we're concerned about these 83% leaving. The question is, in my opinion, What are we doing deliberately, not accidentally, to make the next person want to stay? I want to tell you about someone who understood this problem long before any of us had words for it. Caslin Fields. A lot of people probably know who she is in this audience. She's the co-chair of SIG Contrabex, the special interest group inside of Kubernetes, whose entire job is to make contributors feel like they belong. Not to ship features, not to fix bugs, to make people feel like they have a place here. She created the new contributor orientation program, which I hope a lot of you are familiar with. If you're not, I would encourage you to look that up on YouTube. And she co-hosts the Kubernetes podcast, making the ecosystem feel accessible to people who are still figuring out where they fit. She makes comics, there's one on the slide here, which are pretty good, to explain Kubernetes because she understood something really important. A good explanation is different between a technology that's useful and a technology that's impossible. None of that merges code, and all of it, in my opinion, is why people stayed. Here's what I want you to notice about Caslin's work. It's almost entirely invisible in the metrics that we use to measure a healthy project. It doesn't show up in your commit graph on GitHub. It doesn't move a burn down chart. There's no dashboard in DevStats that tracks how many people felt seen this quarter. And yet, if you removed it, if you removed her and the people like it, the dropout rate we just looked at, the 83%, there's no doubt that would be higher. It's that gap that I'm trying to drive home here. The work that holds this community together, that has no job title, no on-call rotation, no SLA. It runs on people who decide, without being asked, that someone else belonging is worth their time. So the question becomes, how do we stop leaving that to chance? I've been thinking a lot about what separates people, the people who stayed versus the people who left. It's not skill. They're incredibly talented people in those 83% who left, right? It's not time. Plenty of the people who stayed were just as busy. It's not even passion for the tech. Some of the most technically brilliant contributors I've ever met burnt out quietly and then disappeared. I'm sure you know some as well. What separated them came down to something much simpler. Did someone notice that they were there? Not a robot that auto-assigned a PR, not a thank you template and a merge message. A person who knew their name. A person who remembered a conversation from 3 months ago, reaching out because it wasn't in their job description, but they genuinely wanted to know what that person was up to. The difference between a contributor and a community member is not what they build, it's whether someone is waiting for them to show up. That's really the thing that I want to drive home here. That's it. That's the whole thing. Because it means the health of this community isn't a governance problem. It's not a funding problem, not a tooling problem. It's a people problem. And people problems have people solutions, right? So let me show you what that looks like in practice. So here's what I want to leave with you today. Some action items. 5 things, 1 word. Build. B-U-I-L-D. Not that we need another acronym, but it's practical, actionable, and a good reminder of what this community is supposed to be about. We talk about building software, building infrastructure, building systems. I think we don't talk enough about building the conditions that make all that possible. Each letter is something concrete, something you could do at this conference, maybe do today, or maybe this week, or maybe in the Slack channel that you're already a part of. So let's walk through it. The B in build stands for begin small. Show up for a SIG meeting. Comment on an issue. Fix a typo. Every maintainer started exactly like this. These tiny, small steps. You have to take that first step. They had moments where they didn't know anyone in the meeting. That includes myself. And so this is what we're talking about. The on-ramp exists. People like Caslin are making it easier, I think. It's not a fast track to influence and recognition, but it's real. So jump right in. The U in build stands for understand the culture. This is a really important one for me. Every community has two sets of rules, right? The ones that are written down and the ones that aren't. The unwritten ones take longer. How do people disagree here? What happens when someone makes a mistake? Is this a community that celebrates the attempts or only the results? Who do people go to when they get stuck? Not because of their title, but because of who they are. Watch people as they talk to each other, not in these formal channels, but in meetings, the in-between times, those tiny moments. Observe, watch people and see how they greet new people and other people in the room. Learn the culture before you try to change it. The I in build stands for invest in relationships. This one most people skip because it's not because they don't care, but because it's awkward, right? There's no ticket for it either. So no PR, nothing to merge. It's a bit of an unknown territory to reach out to somebody that you don't know and try to strike up a conversation. But that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing we're talking about. This is what we've been talking about, being the person in the room who cares if people don't show up, right? So my mission to you is to find one person. It doesn't have to be a new contributor or someone junior. It could be someone's work you've admired for years and never told them what it meant to you. Reach out, not asking for anything, not to network. Just say, I appreciate what you did. I noticed you. Glad you're here. That's it. This is the message that I received that changed my career and my life, really. Someone took 2 minutes out of their day. They didn't have to. And just reminded me that my presence mattered. My contributions mattered. It's huge. The L in build stands for leaving things better. So I think there's a category of work in every open source project that everyone agrees is important that nobody really pays attention to or nobody wants to pay attention to, right? Documentation, tests, onboarding guides, that README that nobody's updated since 2019, the issue template that sends new contributors in the wrong direction. So this work doesn't make the release notes, but it's so necessary, right? So necessary for inviting people in. So when Caslin built the new contributor orientation program, for example, she wasn't writing code. She was building the floor that every future contributor stands on. So ask yourself before the day is over, is there one thing in this project that confused you when you started? That you now understand that nobody has ever written down? If so, write it down. And then finally, D in build stands for do it consistently. Everything that I've described today requires one thing that no framework can ever give you: time. Putting in the time, getting the reps in. Not all at once. I think that's the mistake that most people make when treating open source contributions like a sprint, right? Intense for a month, and then they're gone. I think that's totally fine. The community notices the burst, but it remembers more of the consistency, right? Are you willing to stick around? So do a PR a month, one SIG meeting every month, every other month maybe. A message to a new contributor that needs a lifeline, much like you needed on your first day, right? It's not a lot. Spread across a few years, almost nothing. Accumulated over time. It's the difference between someone who visited the community and someone who built it. So I like to say open source didn't build itself, and neither did any of us, right? It takes a village. And so that's my message today. I hope this carries you through the day and onwards. Please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. And then also, if you are interested in getting more involved in open source, there's this talk called The Road Less Traveled by my colleague, Danielle Cook. And talk to Danielle and see how you can get involved. beyond the traditional code contributions. So thank you.